Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Cybersecurity Architecture Designing a Secure Digital Future. I am Shilpa Sharma, and I will be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Also, admissions are currently open. For further details about our courses, please visit our website www.eccu.edu. Our speaker for today's session, Tejas Shroff. Tejas is currently the Senior Director of Managed Security Services at NTT Data, managing the Identity and Access Management practice. He is also an adjunct professor at the University of Texas at Dallas, where he teaches various cybersecurity courses to graduate students at the Jindal School of Management. He is a board member of FBI-affiliated non-profit IntraGuard National, serves on the advisory board for Collin College Cybersecurity Program, and mentors the UTD Cybersecurity Club. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Tejas.
Thank you very much, Shilpa, and welcome everyone. So as Shilpa mentioned, here is my background, and you can look me up on LinkedIn too. So I want to start off talking briefly about what is cybersecurity architecture, why do we need it, etc. So cybersecurity architecture, we all know that the the use cases for needing cybersecurity are increasing day by day, right? And once that is increasing, we need to have a framework, we need to have a structure in place which organizations can implement to protect their infrastructure, their assets, and most importantly, their sensitive information from hackers, various other threats, accidental or intentional. Somebody might be able to get access to your sensitive information. So you need to protect that. So how do we protect it? We design our systems and make it very strong so that somebody is able to not break in, and if they even break in, they don't get access to the sensitive data that easily. They don't get access to our assets easily. So cybersecurity architecture helps basically combine a blend of policies, principles, models, and standards which are designed to achieve an in-depth state of defense. It's like if you're telling someone that you have to protect your family, right? There's no ground rule, but you have to do various things together to protect your family, right? Likewise, when you're protecting your enterprise, you're doing various things which you can do so that the policies are to be created, uh, standards are to be adhered to, technical solutions have to be put in place, and that way you can build your architecture. So you want to create a structured framework that can protect your organization's data systems and networks from cyber threats. Building a robust architecture is very crucial if you want to protect your sensitive data in a increasingly hostile digital space. And we all know that the digital landscape is getting more and more hostile every day. So what are the components of your cybersecurity architecture? You need to have security policies and standards. You need to define your identity and access management strategy, network security, protecting your endpoints, protecting your data. You need to have your security operations center in place, which can monitor, which can collect the logs, and then you also have your incident response and recovery process and procedures, which can actually go ahead and help handle any security incidents. We're not saying there won't be any security incidents, but you should be designed so that you can handle that security incident. So anybody who's familiar with cybersecurity might have heard this term called defense in depth. Defense in depth is a layered strategy which even the National Security Agency, US, uses basically so that we are providing and protecting in layers. You protect your network, then you protect your applications, you protect your other things, and data was the innermost layer which you're presenting. And for that, they were using what they call it as a castle and moat analogy for traditional perimeter based security, where you focus on defending key assets. And the problem is, uh, your data was isolated and kept it like anybody who's seen castles in the medieval times, you would see that your core data would be kept inside, hidden, so that when you're trying to get in from outside, you have to cross various layers in order to access your data. But that worked in the past times. Now we are in a environment where we actually have to go with a museum analogy. You're no longer hiding your data. You actually have to display your most important data. I don't know if anyone's ever visited uh, various museums, but if you look at it, some of their best pictures, if you go to Louvre Museum in France, you would see that a picture of Mona Lisa, which is the most famous painting, is also kept in the same room with a lot of other paintings, and people can actually go view it. That to me should be called your crown jewel, but you're still displaying your crown jewel so people can actually view it, and that is where the shift is happening. Earlier, it was a castle where the data was hidden. Now it's a museum where you display it, and you still have to manage that people are able to access, but yet there is security which is protecting that. So the next bullet I'm talking about is the zero trust model, where you're basically reinforcing the museum analogy with the fundamental principle. Never trust, always verify. Just because you authenticated somebody once doesn't mean that person is authenticated for the entire duration. You have to keep on always authenticating, making sure that somebody who was authenticated once is able to prove themselves either through their identity validation, either through their identity verification, by authenticating and authorizing again and again. And this has to be blended in your security architecture. So what we call it as a continuous access verification. And this is what will help mitigate the risk. And earlier, back in the days, when I'm saying back in the days, I'm only talking 4 or 5 years pre-COVID, where people's boundaries were defined by perimeter. And you could lock down your perimeter and you could restrict. But now, post-pandemic, we all know the focus has changed. People work from anywhere. They can work from a coffee shop, they can work from library, they can work from homes, anywhere. Actually, most of the people work from anywhere but office. So how do you allow them to access? You don't want to have their user experience suffer. So what needs to be adjusted? The security architecture needs to be adjusted so that it allows for you to work from anywhere, gives you the same user experience, but at the same time, you're able to go in and put the same controls. You cannot compromise your user experience. Sorry, you cannot compromise your security to improve your user experience. So the task has got a little tougher for the security guys, but I'm sure we as security people are up for that challenge. So as I mentioned, castle model used to have the data hidden and kept inside, so it was protected. Now the times have changed and you need a museum approach. You need to display your crown jewels and yet protect them. Zero trust adds a new mix because you don't know who your next threat is. It's better not to trust anyone. Be it insider, outsider, they should be treated the same. Be it a device or human, likewise. Are you coming from the network or non-network? Threat could come from any source. So it's better that you take everyone the same. Do not make assumptions. Just go with the validation and verification and move forward. So why is security architecture needed? So that will help you create the foundation for your organization's defense against cyber threats. It will ensure that all the components are protected. These days, these are some of the things that we want to protect on cybersecurity architecture. There's cloud, there's networks, there's IoT devices everywhere. You have to look at your endpoints. You have your mobile devices. You can access from anywhere and yet get the same experience, right? So you have to protect them. When a cybersecurity architecture adheres to all seven principles of zero trust security model, devices, people, data, networks, workload, automation and orchestration, and visibility and analytics, then an enterprise can secure data and IT resources wherever they reside. So important to know that these are the seven principles of zero trust security model. Devices, people, data, networks, workload, automation and orchestration, and visibility and analytics. You need to have all of these put in place so your enterprise can secure data and IT resources wherever they reside. So how do you do that? By designing your architecture and making it robust enough so that if somebody were to get inside your network, somebody were to get inside your building, A, they're not able to get in. That's what your goal should be. But for some reason, if they are able to get in either through tailgating, either through poking a hole somewhere, you want to make sure that they don't get access to your sensitive information, your core data. So that's why designing a good security architecture is the key. So what do? By employing vendors' point security solutions architecture, you can create different vendors are there. You implement their point security solutions architectures. You would create a patchwork architecture, right? The patchwork architecture is not good because then it was bound to leave some holes in between. So you have to take a holistic approach, right? You have to close the security gaps. How do you close the security gaps? By first identifying what is the risk and try to work on reducing the risk. You also have to consider about increasing your efficiency, but the most important thing is you need to have a multi-layered holistic approach and create that end-to-end consolidated security architecture. What are the benefits of having a consolidated architecture? You improve the overall security, you prevent known and unknown zero-day threats. Zero-day threats. What is zero-day threats? Zero-day threats are the ones which do not have a fix. They've they were discovered today. Today could be the zero day, the day zero, where the threats were discovered, and you don't have a fix for that. What else do? You need to automate your security across all enforcement points. You need to provide full visibility into organization's threat posture, and you reduce your TCO. What's TCO? Total cost of ownership, and you increase your operational efficiency. So, what does an architecture do? Right? And like I said, why is it critically important? Because of the ever-growing sophistication and diversity of cyber threats. Serves as a bedrock for safeguarding sensitive information, business operations, and the overall integrity. By adopting a comprehensive and strategic approach, you're transcending the reactive approach and then proactively going and fortifying your organization. You not only are defending against known vulnerabilities, but you're anticipating and adapting to emerging risks by creating resilient posture. And the threats are continuing to evolve. So, well designed security architecture is essential for maintaining business continuity, protecting critical assets, and preserving shareholders' trust. If you guys know, cybersecurity threats is among the top four threats, and that has already been discussed by World Economic Forum as well. So, cybersecurity threats are among the fourth highest threats after the global warming and the terrorism and all that. So, everyone, the boards are starting to take notice. A lot of wars are now fought on the cyber battlefield. So, sometimes we are undermining problems that a cybersecurity threat can cause. And all that can be protected by designing your architecture, which is very, very strong, which is resilient. And resilient means you're able to even bounce back very easily. A lot of companies have gone out of business if they were breached. We want to make sure that our architecture is designed so if at all something happens, we are able to bounce back. I've listed number of bullets here, which are just stating the fact that it's an exponential problem. First of all, cyber threats make any companies a moving target. It's not like they're only targeting one area. It could be targeted anywhere. So it's a moving target. It's no longer limited just to businesses. It's a consumer problem. One employee could be phished and that can open up the floodgates. Hackers are getting more and more sophisticated. Social engineering is expanding like anything. And AI is easily compounding the problem. AI has a lot of good things, but a lot of good things, when they are twisted, they are bad things. It's about AI, right? You feed what data you feed. If you feed AI the bad data and you call it as good, AI is going to build their model on that bad data, and then so a lot of people are using AI to write malwares. So AI is definitely going to be a problem going forward if not handled correctly. Every year, every 2 years, new devices are launched. You would see two of the biggest players, Samsung, Apple, they're launching various products, right? Uh, Laptops wise, various products are being launched. New OS versions are created. Digital transformation, moving to the cloud, was at its highest during the COVID time. A lot of people are going away from on-prem environment to cloud. So digital transformation is at its highest. Workforce is globalized, and it's getting more and more globalized. Um, Post-pandemic, people are working from anywhere. Business resilience and compliance, as I mentioned, business resilience is becoming more and more necessary, that you should be able to bounce back, and more and more compliance frameworks are coming out which requires you to adhere to their standards. And the last bullet is about ransomware. Everyone knows about ransomware, what ransomware does to you, right? ransomware can cripple a business severely. So all of these have a capability to put any businesses, literally any enterprises can go out of business, right? If any of these get hit onto your environment. So what else do we do? We can do threat modeling. Just quick time check. Shilpa, how are we doing with time?
Yes, Tejas, you have time, you can proceed.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah. So threat modeling is the process of using hypothetical scenarios, system diagrams, and testing. You basically first proactively go in and do a threat modeling. You identify where the threats could be, and then you create your architecture. So typically, you start creating your threat modeling when your architecture is about 50-70% complete. And then you do the threat modeling, assess if you have missed out on any uh, obvious threats. By identifying vulnerabilities, you go ahead and improve your overall security posture. You can do threat modeling, so you can create data flow diagrams, you can create your attack paths, attack trees, so that you identify where your assets are and where your risks are. You have to apply that context. Threat modeling as a service can allow an organization to focus on remediation and high level network architecture decisions. So threat modeling needs to be performed early in the development cycle so your potential issues can be caught early and remediated instead of waiting till the end where the much costlier fix needs to happen, right? You can use threat modeling to think about security requirements, and that can lead to the proactive architectural decisions, which is going to help you reduce your threats from the start. So when you're designing your architecture, you should be doing threat modeling. Once you're about 50-70% complete, go and do the threat modeling so you can adjust your architecture based on the threats you found. If you don't do that, sometimes you create your architecture in a silo, you have not assessed your threats, and what you end up with is an architecture which may not be solid. You may not have designed certain policies, you may not have designed certain controls, you probably have not gone and put the resilience in your architecture. So at the end of the day, what you're left with is somewhat of a flimsy architecture where you can actually uh, suffer because once a bad event happens, you're not able to recover. You're not able to stop. So we all know, right, that even in our homes, if we have architecture, our buildings have architectures. If there's an earthquake or so, you need your building to be resilient enough so that the building doesn't come crashing. Likewise, your cybersecurity architecture will protect you so that your enterprise doesn't come crashing. It needs to be resilient. Yes, there will be shocks, but you should be able to withstand those shocks. Likewise, how you would do that in your home, your buildings, same way your cybersecurity architecture needs to be able to withstand those shocks. So that's why it is critical. Your architecture is very robust, and this threat modeling exercise will definitely help you determine that. So it is using the hypothetical scenarios. Uh, we do that. Now another word for hypothetical scenarios sometimes is what we call it as a tabletop exercise. In the world of cybersecurity, you run through a bunch of tabletop exercises looking at what if scenarios to find what if this happens, what if this happens. These are the scenarios which you build it in, bake it into your architecture so that your architecture is robust, right? A good architecture design comes from the types of scenarios that you look at. If you're designing, as I again go back to the house or a building, you're designing for flood, you're designing for earthquake, you're designing for fire, all those things which are the natural threats. Likewise, here we have digital threats that we are looking at. So we need to make sure that whatever we are designing, it is factoring what the threats could happen. If you're living by the river, then you obviously have to design for flood. If you're living in a high rain area, then you need to make sure that you're able to withstand that rain. So depending on the threat which you have, and this is what the threat modeling can help determine if you have particular threats for your assets. So I would actually just pause here at this point. Shilpa, I think I'll hand it over to you, and I'd like to take on questions so that we can answer it, because this is more of a concept. This is more of telling someone what they need to do, but obviously they have to do it themselves, right? Everyone designs their own home, everyone designs their own architecture, which is different. But your threat is your threat, and my threat is my threat. So we have to design for what affects you, and that's why it is critical that we do our due diligence. So thank you very
Thank
much. I
you.
think I'd like to open up for Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you, Tejas, for delivering such an informative session, and our attendees share the same sentiments. If you are interested to learn more about our program, do let us know in the poll that's going to be conducted now. If you would like to learn more, please select yes, and we will schedule a call to provide you with more information. Also, an important note, admissions are presently open. For comprehensive details regarding our courses, kindly visit our website www.eccu.edu. So, Tejas, shall we start with the Q&A?
Sure.
So, our first question to you is, how is cybersecurity architecture play a role in networking?
When you say cybersecurity architecture play a role in networking, if
Yeah,
somebody can elaborate, and network network is a core part of any architecture, right? Network is the one thing that connects you to the outside world. So your network security definitely needs to be factored in. It needs to be strong enough so that when you design your cybersecurity architecture, your network, even though you may not have a physical boundaries for an organization, you still need to have a robust enough network so that um, you're able to access it from anywhere. Network is the simplest point of compromise, so it absolutely plays a great role in networking. Hope that answers. If you have any follow-ups, please feel free to ask.
thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, what is the meaning of the abbreviation TCO? I am in a new cybersecurity field.
Yep. I think you missed it. I actually mentioned it on the meeting. TCO stands for total cost of ownership.
Thank you so much,
Right.
Tejas, for
So it's
answering
about
that.
how you get more value out of your investment, and gets more to do with the total cost of ownership. Is It's not just the license; it is just your overall cost it will take for you to own a particular product or a service. And it has direct bearing on the value you get.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, uh, hello, my name is John. This was my first webinar and I really enjoyed it. I have a couple of questions. So he have two, three questions altogether, Tejas. So how do you think we can use AI to defend against AI? I understand it's still in stages, but wouldn't it make sense to eventually use AI to counter itself? Also, how can I obtain my certification of completion again?
Okay. So I'll take the first part. Shilpa, you can take the second part. So you're absolutely right. AI will be used to counter AI because to counter something of the magnitude of what AI can do, you can only use AI to do that. If you look at every single security company these days, they're building AI, they're creating their own LLMs. So they're doing the large language models, they're also doing the SLMs, small language models, to counter what threats could come out of AI. So, absolutely, you're right. AI is going to be used to counter AI, but most importantly, you need to build that into your product, build that into your system so that you're resilient enough to counter that. Yeah. Shilpa, you can take the second one. How can you get the certificate?
Yes, sure, Tejas. Thank you for answering. Our next question to you is, how holistic approach is different and give advantage over patchwork security architecture? Please elaborate holistic layered architecture approach.
So, with the patchwork architecture, it's coming from different vendors. So, i- if somebody is familiar with the terminology built-in versus bolt-on, I would say when you build something into your system, you have basically designed it from ground up and everything is stitched properly. But if you bolt on, you're buying things from outside and you're trying to connect, it may or may not integrate well with the different uh, products that you're trying to put it in, and that would make it like a patchwork architecture. But if you are able to do it in such a way so that even if it's a patchwork, it is connected from inside, then you're getting the holistic approach, you're getting the strategic approach, and you're no longer having the different vendors, you're having an integrated solution, which is what makes it a holistic approach. And that's what I'm trying to get to is you use a holistic approach instead of going uh, different vendors. Using different vendors is not a problem, but you have using different vendors so that they are integrated. That is what is to be done. So that's how it separates from doing a patchwork to a holistic approach, which is more strategic and which is more um, thought through. Hope this answers.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, can you define the AI cybersecurity architecture roles and responsibilities?
So it's a very open-ended, broad question. No, you cannot define AI cybersecurity roles and responsibilities. As AI is not defining you the roles and responsibilities. What AI is helping you with designing the system, AI is helping you uh, bring a complete another layer of the threats that are being posed to you. So, so I would say AI is definitely something that is uh, something that needs to be done, which needs to be embedded in designing the system. But no, AI cannot uh, define the roles and responsibilities for you. Yes, every company is going to start having like a chief AI officer. AI will be a part of strategy, and they will start typically start reporting to your CIO so that it gets embedded into your overall IT strategy.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, could you please suggest some threat modeling methodologies or framework that would suit better in the context of cloud infrastructure security? And thank you for this very fruitful session.
So there are various methodologies for threat modeling. Tried by Microsoft is one of the most popular ones. Stride typically stands for your spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and escalation of privileges. So, Stride is a Microsoft methodology. Please feel free to reach out. There are other various methodologies too, but Stride is the most um, popular one because of A, it is a Microsoft thing. A lot of people are used to using Microsoft, and B, from what it has survived. There used to be another one called Dread, but that is no longer being used. So there are lots of methodologies, but uh, look for Stride.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, in the presence of evolving threats and increased attacks, how cybersecurity architecture ensure emerging threats handling?
So that is why I said that you have to do the threat modeling. You have to look at the scenarios. You have to design. So say let's give you guys an example. If you are creating an apartment building, uh, which say you're starting to build now, what would you factor in when you're starting to build the apartment building? You're probably thinking you're going to stay in that building for at least another 20 years. I'm just using some hypothetical scenarios like what we did in threat modeling. So if you're going to stay there for 20 years, what do you need to make sure that the building is able to sustain for 20 years? You have designed the environment which is strong enough so that you can be there for 20 years. You have the amenities. Threats could come from anywhere. So your building structure needs to be strong. Internally, it needs to be strong. Your fixtures and everything needs to be able to last it. So depending on that, you design your architecture to manage the threats from today through the next 20 years. You're not looking at threats, what had happened in the past, but you would definitely consider them in your history when you're designing. If that land which you're building on was, uh, say, earthquake was something which was happening in that area, then you need to build your apartment building so that it is able to withstand the shocks. If there was flood, as I mentioned, if there was a lot of rains, then you need to factor for that threat. So depending on the type of threat you're going to face, you factor that in. Now, can something happen in the future? Like I'll give you an example of an unfortunate incident which happened 23 years back, right? When the Twin Towers for the World Trade Center were designed, was it that somebody had designed the system not thinking about all the threats? They designed everything possible, but this particular use case was not factored in, where the planes with full fuel come and um, attack you, and that can melt down the entire building. Now, that scenario was not factored in. But now, any of the bigger buildings which are designed in the future, maybe there is a good chance that somebody might factor that threat in to see that nothing like this happens, at least not this extent of damage, right? At the end of the day, if there is an attack, there will be some damage. But you need to make sure that one, you're able to be resilient and bounce back. And two, if there is an attack, you don't lose your core data, your crown jewels, etc. So hope that answers.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is how to foolproof the integrity of the cybersecurity architecture?
When you say how to foolproof, I would say more and more iterations, more and more validation. So even cybersecurity architecture should not be done by one person or so, right? It should be done with your enterprise architects. You have to follow frameworks like SAPSA or even TOGAF. SAPSA is specifically designed for cybersecurity architecture. So you factor those in, you apply those principles when designing the architecture. A lot of times people come up with something and they call it architecture. Architecture should be where somebody is going through, looking through the use cases that what happens with this, what happens with this, what happens with this, identify the loopholes and design your system. That's what you call defining your architecture. So as long as you are following the like methodology and keeping it integrated, I think you should be fine.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, can you elaborate some role of AI in today's cybersecurity warfare?
Yeah, I think I already answered a similar question. The role of AI is still being evolving. AI is being thrown in everywhere. So the biggest thing that we need to do is we have to factor the pros and cons of AI. Means obviously look at social engineering, right? Social engineering has become so much easier with AI. Deep fakes, people's voice can easily be used for different things. The ethical aspect of AI needs to be followed. It's easier said than done. So AI is everywhere. Now AI is a tool which is in the hands of 15 and 16-year-olds who can actually go and cause havoc. Social engineering, um, they like to play around on the social media. And it's not just 15 or 16-year-olds, it could be anyone. If you don't know who your next threat is, the person who could be your best friend could also be doing something like that and you wouldn't know. So that's the reason we are talking about the zero trust mindset, right? You don't know who your next threat is. You have to prepare for anyone and everyone. And AI is only going to make that life easier. So obviously continue to watch the space to make sure what AI can do, and everyone needs to have AI built into their life.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that questions. We have received a lot of questions, but due to time frame, we'll take last two questions for the day. So our next question to you is, how do you go about performing security architecture assessments? Do you use a particular methodology or framework?
Yeah, we definitely use particular methodology or framework. We have a set of questions that we've developed, and we would go through performing that architecture assessment. Obviously, is that an exhaustive list? No, it can never be an exhaustive list because you have to continuously look at that, evolve. But also, do not develop your questions independently. Try to understand the context of somebody's business problem before you define what are the things that you need to do to address. So I would say, as long as you have it defined into your overall questionnaire, you should be okay. And yes, you have to continuously revalidate. So if somebody was on prem and then were looking at doing a migration, digital transformation, then you have to do the assessment again because now your architecture has changed.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our last question to you is, what are most common tools or solutions used to protect stored data against ransomware attacks?
What are tools to protect? It's not just the tools. It's a combination of people, process, and technology, which is what you will need to combat things like ransomware, etc. Right? So you it is if I tell you one or two tools, that's not going to help. That's something which you'll have to do on Google. But you'll have to look at the overall picture, do the people, process, and technology in order to combat a threat of something like a ransomware attack.
Thank you so much, Tejas, for answering
So,
those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Now, before we conclude the webinar, Tejas, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
no, like I said, keep yourself. If you are really interested in cybersecurity, continue to join various groups on LinkedIn, other sources. Try to get involved. It's about knowing what is happening, which will only help you. Right? If you're starting out, get yourself certified. ECCU offers good courses. A lot of other places you can get some certifications, get some trainings. So I would strongly recommend that if you're trying for a serious career in cybersecurity, which you should, according to me, you should actually try to first get your knowledge uh, up to the mark because it's kind of like law enforcement, right? You are hiring policemen or army folks to combat the threat. You need proper training and the tools so you can actually combat the threats. If you're a if you are an IPS in India, for instance, right, police service, or if you are joining the police force in US or something, you are actually able to go in and uh, fight the criminals. You need to have training on the tools. You need to know the processes, what needs to be done, and yet you also need to know the law, which is what cybersecurity helps you. It helps you know the policies. It gives you the access to the tools, and it gives you access to the framework so that you can go and combat the threat. So that is my message. That please do not jump in because this may sound lucrative. First, do your basics, do your uh, trainings, do your education, and then come to the world of cybersecurity. This is not a one time activity, this is a mindset. You need to first understand if you're going to have that mindset to defend the cyber turf, then you might as well put some yards in so that you are able to add a lot of value. And this as a career will be here for long because people will continue to find ways to break into the system. So I don't think this problem is going to be solved. We all only need to make sure that we are equipped to counter any problem. So with that, I will hand it over back to you, Shilpa.
Thank you so much, Tejas, for the message to our audience.